David, here's your watch. Thank you for your patience. I don't normally work on Thanksgiving, and so it just didn't work out. So, but we've got your video here. The watch, the movement was generally fine. Let's talk about the numbers. You mean 263? 264. I mean, it came out really, really well. Those are really, really, really exceptionally good numbers. The watch had some issues again because of it had multiple intrusions of water through. So I had to do, there was little bits of corrosion and hazing everywhere, like the winding weight. You see these little white specks and spots on them? That is from little bits of corrosion. It wasn't bad enough that I felt it was necessary to replace the weight. I did clean it. I had to use some chemicals to try and get that clean. But it's one of these things that, I mean, the people treat these watches like they're divers, even when they haven't been serviced in a long time and they don't have new seals, and we get all of these problems that happen as a result. Hang on a sec. Here's your dial as it is now. Always with the terrible light in this place. I was able to do some very good things I'm happy with. Your handset I thought was going to be a lot worse. It cleaned up better than I thought it was going to. Typically when there's that much corrosion on the hands, it eats into the plating around these loom windows, but that did not really happen here. The surface is hazed, so instead of the high bright chrome that these were originally, like you can see on the sweep hand, the corrosive mix of loom and water that these things had turned into sort of etched the surface of the hands a little bit. Your sweep hand really kind of avoided most of that, and in fact, that pink stop light right there, I'm very proud of that. That's your original one. I didn't swap that out. So this tip has been reloomed. This is your original hand, and the surface is original. But the watch had, especially under the rotating ring, under the crystal retaining snap ring, around the black chapter ring between the dial and that chapter ring, and around the edge of the dial, it had terrible water damage. You can see that there's sort of a variation in the hash marks here about how they look, and that's because the water got in here between. There's a ring here that sits on top of the dial. In a 6309, like this poor example, Seiko changed the design. Instead of having these hash marks printed on the dial, they printed them on the chapter ring. In a 6105, the chapter ring is black, and the hash marks are on the dial. So when the water gets in and it sits on this dial, it sits here, it steams all this stuff off. You can see also another indicator of the water damage is this Seiko is it's darkened. Whatever the sort of the satin finish that they put on these metal Seikos, when it's exposed to water over a long time, it turns black. It's supposed to look more like this. You can see that there. So, and there's no real way to bring that back. I've had some limited success in the past in ameliorating some of this darkness, but it takes chemicals, and then you start endangering the printing here on automatic. But the most important thing on a 6105, really honestly, is the loom condition. And your loom condition is great. It's really unreal, actually, how good the dial loom is. So that's the huge deal. You've got some lightness on your markings, the hash marks on the dial, but the loom is good, and that's a huge win. There was all kinds of corrosion, surface hazing and corrosion on the case underneath where the dial is, and because the water got in through your bad crystal seal, and it just sat, and it just wicked around, and it sat on the in between all the tight surfaces of the dial and the chapter ring and all that stuff. And so I had to really clean it with chemicals to neutralize the corrosion, and it took time, but it's better now. Let's talk about your parts. There's one part I didn't charge you for. I should have, but I didn't, and it's not that big of a deal. This is your dial ring. It came out in pieces. So that's been replaced. The reason the watch wasn't working, as I told you, is that the mainspring had come apart. It literally was in pieces inside. And you can see this. See how this is like this weird warp, this weird curlicue here? It's supposed to be an even, beautiful, steady coil. And this is it's all jacked up. And the whole thing was apart. And you can see it had really been working inside the mainspring barrel, because the mainspring barrel surfaces are all eaten up. And I have here this is. Everything was damaged, including your arbor, which is right there. That's your mainspring arbor, mainspring barrel, barrel cap, mainspring, and your mainspring's all jacked up. You can look at that for fun or make it into cufflinks or whatever. Here are your seals, including, this is the super cool thing I love to talk about, that is your original crown seal. There it is, hard as plastic. Look at that. Literally like a chunk of plastic. And there's your old Type 2 crystal. I'd hold on to this. It's cool. Someday in the future, maybe if I ever get a lens grinder, I could maybe bring these old crystals back, which would be nice. But in the meantime, I mean, the underside is fine. But it's a Type 2. It's an original crystal. I would keep it. Anyway, your watch is happy. Everything is fine now. Everything has been cleaned. Everything is solidified. All new seals in place. Everything is repaired that was broken. All the loom has been, I carefully cleaned all the loom. The dial printing is as good as I can make it. And of course the hands are reloomed. And I'm very proud of the little pink stoplight hand there. That's a cool thing. Anyway, that's your watch. Thanks, man.